Greetings and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Vice President of News and Content at the Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. Joining me again today, as he does each and every week, is the Center Square's Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief, Casey Harper. How are you, Casey?
Doing good, Dan. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. I was wondering, Casey, do you have $100,000 laying around that you would generously donate to the federal government?
I haven't got my Christmas bonus from you yet, Dan, so the jury's out. Maybe I will in a few weeks, but right now, no, not quite. Just a few dozens of thousands of dollars short. Why do you ask?
So the reason I asked that question up front was the federal debt now has grown so much that if we were to pay off that debt in a single swoop, every single American would owe $100,000. You reported about that this week at thecentersquare.com. That's staggering.
Yeah, I mean, it is a grim milestone. And I'll say that, we were really the only people to cover this. This is a crazy milestone. I mean, I think there was maybe a blog or two that covered it, but at the national media level, we were really leading on this. And it is a grim milestone. It's sad to me, if I can inject a little opinion, it is sad to me how we keep hitting these national debt or economic, milestones, and they come and go, and no one seems to really care. I mean, our credit rating was downgraded a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago, and there was a little bit of media coverage on it, but that, this kind of just came and went. And then another international credit rating agency downgraded us a little bit. It just came and went, and now we're hitting $100,000 in debt per person. And we reported on it. If you're listening to this podcast or reading thecentersquare.com, you're an educated voter and you know about it, but there's no marches on Washington. There's no press conferences on Capitol Hill about this. And that's probably not a great sign. But how do we get this math worked out, though? Essentially, there's just big top line numbers, about 330 million Americans, and the national debt is nearly $34 trillion. And it's going up, constantly. Our deficits are over $1 trillion a year now. And so the debt is only going to keep going up. The deficits are going up. There's no sign of reining this in. I put a graph in the story showing that how the deficits, have steadily decreased since the big bailout of the 2008 financial recession, and then kind of middled out, and then at COVID they spiked, and they've gone down a little bit since COVID, but they're still higher than they were before COVID. And so the president and others have taken a lot of credit for cutting deficits, but it's really a little disingenuous because our deficits now are still higher than they were in 2019, let's say.
We talked about the national debt. I'm looking at the U.S. national debt clock right now. As you mentioned, it is just snowballing towards $34 trillion at 33,898 billion. These numbers are so high I can't even get my mind wrapped around them. You would think $100,000 per every single American, that Congress would raise the alarm about this and do something about it, yet Congress doesn't seem interested.
Yeah. Dan, do you remember when the bailout was passed in 2008 or after 2008 financial crisis? And there was a huge debate, and it was just unfathomable to lawmakers, the American people, and the outcry over the omnibus bill. I remember it was like $800 billion. And there was this huge debate over how it could even be that Congress would pass such a large bill. I don't know if you remember that, but now it's like commonplace that we spend well over that in a deficit each year, and not in a crisis, not in a great recession. It's just kind of our normal standard operating procedure. And people remember, we actually didn't have a deficit. I believe it was in 1999 or 2000. There was no deficit. And so this is not like America's always been this way. We've been fine so far. We'll be fine. No. In about the year 1999 or 2000, we did not have a deficit. We actually had a budget surplus, I believe. And so to go from there in the course of 20 years to this unsustainable path, it's not a good look right now.
I'll tell you what. Yeah, essentially what we're doing is we're going to be making our kids, our grandkids, suffer, because at some point this is going to get beyond any solutions. You have almost $34 trillion in debt. You have interest on the debt. And what you've reported recently, too, about the interest payments, tell me about that. The interest payments on that debt are belonging to, it's like one of the most expensive items in the national budget, right?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most important points because, some economists and experts will say, well, we don't have to actually pay that debt back. I mean, governments hold debt. Governments hold large amounts of debt. So you could say theoretically, like if the U.S. stopped deficit spending right now and we stopped adding to the debt, it's not like we would have to go full Dave Ramsey and sell everything to pay down our $34 trillion. We could just hold on to the $34 trillion, make payments on it, and go on our way. And there's some truth to that. But one, doesn't seem very likely that we're going to stop debt spending. And two, we are on track very, very soon, within a few years, to have interest on our national debt to be the single largest expense for the federal government. So it is going to impact not just our grandchildren. It's going to impact, we're talking next 5 or 10 years, this generation, when it comes to the financial outlook and what we're able to do as a country, what we're able to spend money on, even more than defense, even more than something like Social Security, which obviously needs a lot of help. We are not going to be able to address those problems as well, even if there's some kind of bigger war. We're going to be handcuffed on that. Why? Because the biggest expense for the federal government is going to be interest payments on the national debt. And so this is not just like one day our generations to come might have to pay down these trillions of dollars. This is something that, we are dealing with right now. Just the interest alone is going to be our biggest expense. And so it's not just the future. It's really is now.
Of course, every U.S. taxpayer dollar that goes to pay interest on that debt is a dollar that can't go to pay for national security, to pay for Social Security benefits for retirees, to pay for health care for retirees. Of course, we could go on and on and on and listing all the services that the federal government provides that money is being taken away from because of this deficit. It's not being talked about enough. I don't think it was mentioned at the Republican presidential primary debate that you covered the other night. It just seems to me that this should be a major issue for Congress, for presidential candidates, etc. But Casey, we are out of time. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Casey Harper, I'm Dan McCaleb. Please subscribe. Thank you for listening.
Knowledge is power, and you deserve to know what happens in your state government. That's why the nonprofit Franklin News Foundation is bringing you straight news journalism through the Center Square, reporting on state authorities and publishing stories that show where your money goes and who spends it. By supporting the Center Square, you can track politicians' use of taxpayer money and demand transparency from elected officials. This is how we can equip everyday Americans to hold their government accountable. Become a supporter of Franklin today at franklinnews.org/donate.